Hi, friends. I want to give you a little response to the difficulties that we have in the body around the world about sexual harassment and sexual sin within the congregations of faith, even among leaders. We're dealing with, of course, a crisis situation with IHOP, but there's also situations here in Israel. I don't know, other places around the world. Nobody has a monopoly on it. I want to describe to you a few rules that we have sent out to all of our leaders at Tikkun, and you're free to take them and use them. You don't have to steal them. We give them to you freely. And these are things that we've really worked on for 30, 40 years, some of them more than 40 years. You can find some of them in my book, Covenant Relationships, in Dan's book, Dan Jesser's book, Due Process. But these are values that we have, and I think it's worth just stating them very quickly. So I want to go over a few guidelines for sexual propriety, and the second one is for rules of congregational accountability. I'm going to go over it very quickly because I want to give you just some summary points. You ready? Take a deep breath. Here we are. Here are a few rules, 7 rules for sexual propriety. Here they are. Number 1, 4 walls. What I call 4 walls. Men and women who are not married should never be in the same closed room or isolated place together at any time. If that's the case, open the door, invite somebody else to come in. Don't allow that to happen. Not only could something bad happen, but there could be accusations, rumors. You can't have non-married men and women in the same closed room. Secondly, we believe in modesty, particularly modesty of dress, modesty of behavior. It's particularly, of course, concerned with women's dress, but it's not just that. It's part of our culture of faith that we want to have modesty in our speech, in our attitudes, and how we react. Let's share that as a value, a cultural, moral value that we have as believers. The third thing is that if you witness something in the congregation, that is inappropriate, you can feel free to come and share it. In every congregation, there should be leaders, particularly that women can share with women and men with men, that if you witness something, you don't have to just ignore it. You can come and talk to somebody. That's not the same thing as going and gossiping about it to somebody else, just the opposite. You don't gossip, but you can come and report and say, look, I'm concerned. I saw something that didn't seem appropriate, and therefore you let the elders kind of get a chance to deal with it. The fourth one is not just if you witness something, but if you have been harassed, and we want to tell you, men or women, but particularly women, if you have felt harassed, sexually harassed in any way, particularly if that's coming with some sort of pressure with someone in a position of authority, we also want to invite you. Come. The congregational leadership and the women in that are open for you. And we're saying, don't swallow it. Don't hide it. Come and bring it. Because we want to follow up on it in the leadership. The next thing is personal struggle. Now, this means not that you witness something or you are harassed, but maybe you yourself, you're dealing with an area of temptation, of sin. You're having a difficulty with it. Again, don't keep that alone. Come and share that. Could be with another brother or sister in the faith, but also women to women, men to men. You can share that with the leadership in the congregation. So whatever it is, if you witness something, if you're harassed, or if you're struggling with your own temptation, come and talk with somebody. We want to be a supportive community to help in all these different directions. The sixth rule in this is not just an outward action, but what we call soul ties, because you have to watch out. Immoral situations don't just happen. There is usually, particularly for believers, an emotional attachment that happens first, where your soul begins to be attached to another person. Of course, we're talking about men and women that you're not married. But if you notice a soul tie happening, you need to cut that relationship, distance it immediately before it turns into a more sensual or sexual temptation. That's a soul tie. The last thing is that if something does happen inappropriately, we have rules in the Bible, particularly described in Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 to 18. We believe in Matthew 18 rules of accountability and discipline, and you can turn to that. Those are the 7 rules of sexual propriety. I'll just list them out again. 4 walls, modesty. If you witness, if you're harassed, you have a personal struggle, you're developing a soul tie, and using Matthew 18 principles of accountability. Great. All right. Now, I also want to share with you another issue here, which is how do we handle this accountability? I just said Matthew 18, but let's walk that out now. What is our pattern for dealing with problems? Now, these problems are not just sexual temptations. They could be false teachings in the Bible. They could be financial mismanagement. They could be wrong leadership. Anything that happens of improper behavior, we have a biblical structure of how to deal with it. And I want to give you those very simply here again in 7 rules of what we believe in biblical and congregational accountability. Here they are. Number 1 is a community with elders. We believe that all believers, you believe in Yeshua, you should be in a community of faith, church or congregation or Messianic synagogue in which you have elders. Because that community with elders gives you a framework, a social framework in which problems can be dealt with. And if you don't have an eldership team leading it, then you don't have any framework of authority on how you deal with a problem. The second thing is that these elders have prerequisites for becoming elders. An elder is not someone who has good business principles or is donating a lot of money or has organizational ability. No. The requirements for elders, the prerequisites, are listed in 1 Timothy 3, and those are elements of moral integrity and faithfulness to relationships, particularly to family relationships. That brings up people who are elders who are trustworthy, that they can deal with moral and relationship issues. So those are the prerequisites. You have a community of elders, and those elders have prerequisites of moral integrity and loyalty to relationships. The third issue is that we believe in biblical discipleship. You don't just believe and you don't just join a community, but when you come into a community, everyone should go through a series of teaching and training and have a mentor and have a process where you can go through in both teaching and relationships, where you can be discipled into how to live a quality life, a moral life, a believing life, and you can walk through that. We take that from many places in the Bible, but for instance, Matthew 28, Yeshua said, make disciples of the nations, in all nations, every person. So we believe in biblical discipleship. The next issue is covenant dialogue. This is what we said previously this is the principles of Matthew 18. If there is a problem, if you have a relational problem, a moral problem, if you've been sinned against, if you've sinned against someone, there is a process of dialogue, of loving, gracious confrontation, so that we can be reconciled. And that's listed, as we said before, Matthew 18, verses 15 through 18. It means that you go to someone and you talk to them about it. You do not gossip to someone else. If you have a problem with someone, you don't talk to someone else. You talk to that person, not for the purpose of bringing that one down, but of explaining the situation so that you can hopefully be reconciled. The first part of a covenantal dialogue is to ask what happened. Maybe you didn't understand. Maybe you got your facts right. So go and say, "No, brother, sister, look, we have a certain break of communication relationship. Here's what happened. What did you see? What went on?" And look to be repentance, forgiveness leading up to reconciliation. Then the next one is the fifth rule is an elder's judgment. If you can't solve it just to a one-on-one, you can bring another person, but eventually it can be brought to the leadership and say, look, this is an issue we haven't been able to solve, and you can bring it to the leadership of the congregation, this elders group, men and women together, who can deal with those, and you submit that to them so they can hear both sides and bring a kind of a congregational judgment, a discernment to help settle the issue. Now, that should settle almost every issue. by having an elder's judgment in the situation. In the extreme case that your personal dialogue doesn't work and an elder's judgment doesn't work, you may have a situation that's bigger than that. And we believe that every congregation should also know where they can turn to, the elders can turn to for what I call senior arbitration. That means that an issue, if the elders can't deal with something, they can turn to some respected leaders that are intercongregational, maybe older in the faith, that can either help them with the issue or refer them to professional help or whatever is needed. But you have to know, if you don't know where you go for senior arbitration, you can get stuck in an eldership and not know what to do. For instance, what do you do in an eldership if one of the accusations is against an elder? How are the elders going to deal with it? What if they're dealing with a senior pastor? What if they're dealing with a well-known international leader? You can't handle that just within the elder's judgment. So for every community of faith, you need to have some sort of board or team of people that you recognize ahead of time. These are the people that our pastors can turn to when they need senior arbitration on a problem that's wider or larger than just what the elders can handle. The last rule is, number 7, is that some of the problems today require legal or professional involvement. Not everything is just spiritual to be handled by the elders or even by senior leaders. Sometimes, particularly if there's an issue of sexual harassment, certainly if there's something criminal, if there's any legal issues, even there's some psychiatric issues that go beyond our just praying and casting out demons and praying for inner healing. But we have to know that when you need professional or a legal involvement, it is correct for the leadership of the congregation to turn there and not just say, oh, we have to do this all ourselves. No, that's an improper thinking then. Let me just remind you of these 7 principles again. Every believer in a community with elders. Number 2, the elders have prerequisites of moral integrity and relational faithfulness. Number 3, there is biblical discipleship for all believers to be trained, not just what to believe, but how to live as a believer. Number 4, we have covenant dialogue when there's a problem, one-on-one, go to talk to one another in a hope to be reconciled, as written in Matthew 18. Number 5, if that doesn't work, the situation is turned to the elders that they could make a discernment and judgment in the issue. Number 6, if the elders can't handle it, you turn to senior arbitration. And if that doesn't work, you may be dealing with a situation that needs professional or legal involvement. Well, those are a few principles that we have for sexual propriety and also for congregational accountability and discipline. I hope that's helpful for you. And listen, let's all just keep praying. We love one another. These issues come up, and we need to know how to deal with them. The body at large today needs a deep, deep healing and restoration and freedom from all these things so we can go on to the great things that God has for us in this next stage. We love you. God bless you.